You're good now.
Okay. Hello, everyone. We're Team 4, Anna, Sierra, Elle, Megan, Tony, and myself, Sikorn. Today, we're going to discuss about the Hanjin bankruptcy case. And the reason we chose this case, and many of y'all know that the Hanjin case bankruptcy was built over capacity and then exceeded the shipping industry. The capacity once owned by Hanjin will probably be quickly and easily absorbed by companies taking advantages of situation, allowing smaller company growing for better position themselves in the market. $14 billion worth of cargo was out at sea and stuck in transition. Other major shipping company were tasked with helping getting this cargo to a final destination. So in this discussion, I'm going to be the moderator, and we're going to all discuss and what opinion and based on fact discussion over the question. So the first question we're going to talk about is, there are many factors that contribute to Hanjin's demise, such as major losses during 2008 financial crisis, which come short after orders of several mega ship, general hubris, and executive containers capacity worldwide. Do you think that Hanjin had time to recover from the 2008 crisis, or did they simply ignore lesson learned from the massive losses they accrued during that time?
I think that they just ignored the lessons learned, to be honest. It seemed like they were getting really great forecasts about kind of the market in the shipping industry, and so they listened to the forecast and didn't actually pay attention to kind of the history of the situation and just went forward with producing more and more ships. And what inevitably ended up happening is that the Chinese economy slowed dramatically towards the end of the recession, and then so did the Eurozone crisis also happen. And it's kind of like they could have mitigated the risk had they paid attention to kind of like how the recession happened, but instead they pushed forward really optimistically and didn't heed any lessons.
I agree with you, Anna, and also they didn't have any contingent plans for mitigating any kind of existing or new risk as they proceed forward with this expansion when they decide to build more vessels. So that's they never come out of it. They already look way behind as you look at the timeline of how much Hanjin is in deficit or is in debt. And almost like I feel like they didn't really acknowledge or just try to blindfold it and just proceed forward without how much they dug themselves into a hole and never get out of that.
Mm-hmm.
I agree, Sokran. Sorry.
That's okay. It seems like it's an industry trend. All of the companies are kind of going down the same path. They have too much capacity, too many ships, and they didn't really look at the risk in their industry after the financial crisis seriously. So they shouldn't have been investing in more capacity, but they also shouldn't have been driving the rates down. Because those two things together were going to make it impossible for any of those companies to get out of debt.
Okay, so moving on to the next question then, because that leads to that. Did your company feel any impact from the Hanjin fallout? If so, what happened and how was it resolved? If they could avoid any impact, how did that happen? What lesson of business from that going forward?
My company wasn't impacted, but one of the examples that I heard is Ashley Furniture. They are actually losing $6,000 to $7,000 a day in late charges for their containers because the containers haven't moved. Another example that I can think of is Amazon. It's obviously unclear how much they're losing money, but I'm sure a lot of it would depend on Hanjin shipment.
I agree with you on that as well. And, to add to that point, my company as a biotech company, we have a little bit impact because we have a contract manufacturing in Samsung, South Korea. So some of the part that we have to ship to for large capital expenditure process equipment. And so therefore, it was like delay of the production schedule tremendously for about a few months behind schedule. So.
I actually have a question in regards to that. Did you guys, when you were reading, read anything about like what the companies were actively doing to try to recover their goods? I didn't specifically read anything, but I was just curious if any of you guys saw.
When I read that, some of the company was trying to pay more of the shipper to get the where it is, or pay extra, because if you're having cargo in where Hanjin and you try to like, can they dock it in Oakland or somewhere near port, or east routed? And I know one of the capital equipment project, we have to route it through the East Coast, and then we have to ship it, by truck to come to a West Coast, which is happening in Hillsborough side.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the project I was involved in at
Interesting.
the time. Yeah.
I think one of the things I also saw is a company called HMM, which is getting paid from the South Korean government, and they're trying to help some of the companies that are actually left out right now.
And also, Anna, to add to your question, as I mentioned before, Samsung had $34 million worth of cargo on these ships. So they paid $8.8 million to get the cargo offloaded at their port, and then turn around and up the price of the refrigerators 33% on the market. So the consumers actually paid back that $8.8 million.
Wow.
So I thought that was really interesting that it came out of our pockets, essentially, if you bought anything Samsung as far as kitchen appliances.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's a good point, Sarah. So now if anyone else doesn't have any more comment or discussion to this, we're going to move on to the next question. This is an optional question that a team came up with, so we would like to discuss a little bit further. One of the discussion came out about is, aside from all these goods that's stuck at sea, what about the human condition and the people on board, and how do we feel about it? So we're going to take a little time to discuss about that from a point of view.
I was pretty shocked that the crew members were stuck on board, and most of the supplies that they were receiving was from, whatever countries they were docked outside of for months. I think like some of the last ships only recently got to go home, which, I mean, it seems like, I read a little bit about the crew members getting paid, and like part of them staying on the ship is to ensure they get paid too. But I don't know. It seems like a very big oversight to just leave human capital literally floating at sea.
Yeah, and then for me, when I read it, I kind of feel that compassion. I feel bad because like I would hate to get stuck inside that ship for that many, not knowing how many. And I read one of the articles, the captain said that we have a certain amount of food and supply to last, and not knowing where you are and, not moving. So they were concerned, and aside from the living condition and got stuck there. And, the other part of it too is like all the cargoes on the ships, not just consumable good, it could be animals, and they're just human. And how do you measure lives of the living thing? I mean, lives on the ship, I mean, how much does it cost? It's worth. But I just felt like the media is only pan on how much the company gonna be costing money because the ship's on there. They don't focus like other component of what's on there. How does the ship move? So they take human life to just not take in consideration. I think it's just a little bit.
Well, I think it's funny that you say that because, well, not funny, but I would say ironic, because we know that South Korea, their government was giving funds to this company that went bankrupt. And according to an article that I read about some of the seamen on board, there was 11 South Korean shipmen and 13 from Indonesia. So I feel like as the government that gave this company money that's now bankrupt, what are you doing for the people of your country? what does that say about you to just leave them on ship floating around due to the bankruptcy itself? Being that it happened, it's their government, it was funding this company, and it just seems crazy to me that they're okay with leaving, you know, some of their citizens on ship just for however long until they figure it out.
Right, I agree. And also the other thing that I was thinking about when I was reading the articles was about that some of the ships were seized. And so it's like, what happened to those poor crew people, and, you know, and their families and their payment for their time that they were on the ship, and for anybody who was stuck on the ship if they had medical emergencies. I mean, was there anybody who, you know, was insulin ridden or had heart conditions or anything like that, that was in a position where they put their, you know, literally had their life at risk?
Well, I was also surprised, you know, just given kind of the severity of the situation of having humans on the ship and losing all these goods, that there's still shipping companies that could potentially go bankrupt because the climate in the shipping industry hasn't changed yet. Like the cost is still historically low. I think it's at like 750 FEUs where it used to be 1,800, and there's still an overcapacity. And so I guess I wonder, like, what changes is the industry actually going to make to make sure this doesn't happen to other companies and other people?
Yeah,
I think Tony brought some up
on that. Yeah, it's there's actually multiple companies right now that are in risk of going out of business. Anything from actual cargo ship owners to shipping lines. I believe it was Hanjin was the 7th largest company, shipping company, and the 8th largest that's based, I think it's out of Indonesia. They are about to go out of business as well. And that's going to have impacts in the industry in itself. You're going to see less companies too. A lot of the articles I've been reading that have been coming out in the last couple of days have been saying that 2017, there's going to be like $40 billion worth of mergers between all the top companies, and that they're already kind of acting as 3 different alliances right now, which is going to change the pricing structure going into the future, and availability and competition.
I also think trade is growing, so there might be a good, healthy rates and revenue coming back. There's a possibility for it.
Well, I know when I was doing some research looking at the other companies, yeah, they were saying that as a whole, they are expected in 2016 to have lost $6 billion, and that the largest shipping company, which is Maersk Line, has lost 114 million just in the first 6 months of 2016.
And they're doing that on purpose, which is the weird thing. What I was seeing was that Maersk and a few of the other larger companies have been purposely driving down rates for the FEUs, basically to eliminate smaller competition, because there's just too much capacity. So yeah, they've been trying to basically get anyone who doesn't have as much capital as them out of the business, and then they can take over all those shipping lanes, and that'll take care of overcapacity at the same time.
Crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's not any different like any big company, right? Big corporate, they try to take over the mom and pop, so it's the similar strategy that they're looking into right now. So with that, we want to shift gear back to the other question. How can Hanjin recover if they are structured under Chapter 11 bankruptcy? Can they continue operation? Is it likely that Hanjin will not recover from this utilizing Chapter 11?
No, I think we kind of just answered that too. Okay. It's an economies of scale kind of thing where it's just become everybody's making, you know, these ships that can just and things like that, and it's become overpopulated in the industry. So the likelihood of them coming back from this bankruptcy is just very, very slim. I just don't see it happening because there's not a need, there's not a requirement in the industry. There's other companies who are doing what they did and continue to do that. There's just
it's a big thing.
But it's back to what Tony mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the choice of company to, do ocean freight, you're never going to choose Hanjin again, even if they were infused with cash, because if you need a reliable company, you need someone who's definitely going to get your product where it needs to go on time, and no one will ever trust them again if they ever do actually try to emerge from this.
Yeah,
I agree. A bankruptcy just makes all of their customers essentially not trust them, and it gives them no credibility, and they have plenty to choose from, even if they did come back within the industry, which, like we said, probably won't happen.
Yeah, unless someone else buying that, like a big man that would decide to buy that company. So otherwise, there's no way they could recover that.
One of the articles I read, it was interesting. They were like, well, the obvious solution would be just to scrap all the excess capacity, like, deconstruct all the ships and sell it. But then the other part that is like messing things up is that the prices of iron ore are also really low. So even if they scrap, like, they can't possibly make up the losses if they scrap the ships. So they're just letting the ships sit there unused offshore, which I thought was crazy that, you just literally have these empty cargo ships just sitting unused.
So we have one final last question. And so are there any other leading container shipping company at risk of heading toward bankruptcy of this magnitude?
I think we answered that one.
Yeah, Tony kind of covered that one.
Okay, yeah. So, all right. So,
yeah, any other thoughts, I guess?
Yeah, maybe we have any closing thought.
One small thing that I don't think we touched on was a lot of these companies own ports or control port authorities, stuff like that. And so Hanjin owns the part of the stake in Long Beach and in Seattle. And so now there's not just issues with transport, but with actual ownership of these ports and what happens to the product there. And there's all these giant empty containers that have nowhere to go because Hanjin isn't going to take them back. So
that's a good point. It's like blocking up their space to receive more cargo and shipments in. It's not just about Hanjin. It's about, like Tony just said, I mean, just have it sitting there. What if these containers are just taking up space and they can't do anything with them because, there's fear of not getting paid or things like that. But if you're talking a ship floating out there, then nothing else can come into your port because it's seized right there. I mean, that's a big consideration.
I guess like one last thought is, what do you guys think like retailers can do in terms of their risk management to maybe like mitigate the risks from only using one carrier?
Maybe do like smaller orders from suppliers that are overseas. Don't bring such bulk shipments at once. Like, I know it goes back to inventory and things like that, but to be safe, maybe put smaller orders on different shipping companies. So if it does happen to one, it's not all of your cargo or, $8 million worth of your cargo on this one ship that has now been seized. Now that they see this trend, I feel like they should definitely come up with some type of, plan in case this happens again, which is likely, especially with, a new president in office. There could be some changes with trade tariffs and things like that that'll really affect the industry. So they should plan. And I think one of those ways would be to divide up their shipments.
I agree, Sierra. I think every company should have that contingency plan. So for times like this, especially with the, new person in the office, they would know what to do in times of these situations.
Yeah, and to add to that too, I think look at a different alternate route, not depending solely on shipping. To add to your point, the shippers and shipping company as well, because like what is the lead time, and make it more cushion on contingency plans. And I think that is in the long run probably better for retailers.
Yeah.
And try to determine, the most expensive or the sensible products, go which mode of transportation.
Yeah, some of the other things that I think I read about kind of how retailers can plan is having better like automated fulfillment and better, more frequent inventory statuses, just so that like they're always on top of what they have and what they need and what is coming and when it's coming. That way there's kind of like multiple channels or, you know, switches that they can pull if a huge event like Hanjin happens again.
Yeah, because like those are one of the, you know, natural risks as well. Because if you look at it, that's why you have different outsourcing operation. But if you move your centralize your DC or your warehouse a lot closer to the operation, that's some kind of the mitigation that you could do as the retailers. It's also cheaper, take up reduce capacity, cutting long lead time, delivery times as well.
Yeah. Any last thoughts?
I think we cover about everything else.
All right, I'll go ahead and stop the broadcast.